Ah, Majora's Mask. There's just something about this game. Once seen as the black sheep of the Legend of Zelda series, in recent years, Majora's Mask has become a darling of Zelda fans. While relatively small in scope compared to most Zelda titles, this game features such compelling symbolism that fans are still trying to make sense of it all 20 years later. What or who is Majora? What's up with the happy mask salesman, and why does he exist outside of the flow of time? Is Termina even real? While playing Majora's Mask, you can't help but feel like there's more going on under the surface, and I think this is due to the emotionally mature themes of the game. I first played this game at age 13, then again in my mid-20s, and most recently in my mid-30s. Each time I play, I find new and deeper meanings to the game. As I mature emotionally, Majora's Mask reveals more of its true face, and I believe this is one reason why it has gained in popularity over time. As its fans age, we continue to peel back the layers of the Majora's Mask onion, finding themes, symbols, and metaphors that our younger minds may have missed. In my most recent playthrough, I couldn't help but notice a theme that my younger self was totally oblivious to. Maybe it was due to age, my own life experience, or just the state of the world in 2022. But as I advanced through the game, I realized Majora's Mask is the perfect commentary on trauma, how it affects us, how it can consume us, and how, ultimately, we can move on from it. I want to pause here and say that this video is just an analysis of a video game. I am not a psychologist, and this is definitely not psychological advice. If you are struggling with your own trauma or mental health issues, there are links in the description to resources that may help you get the care that you need. And if you suspect topics like this might upset you, please be gentle with yourself and click away. Also, be warned that there are many game spoilers ahead. Trauma is defined as a prolonged physiological response to a terrible fate, such as a natural disaster, the loss of a loved one, or a violent event. While emotions like anger, sadness, and fear are normal and healthy responses to tragedy, some people stay trapped in these feelings for years or even decades. This prolonged response is referred to as post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. Two of the most common symptoms of PTSD include losing your sense of self and feeling disconnected from the people and world around you. Remember these because we will talk about them later. Some have suggested that Majora's Mask follows the 5-stage grieving process outlined by psychiatrist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Not a bad theory, but I think this game speaks to so much more than grief. It demonstrates the ways in which a traumatic experience, like loss, can contort our spirit and turn us into an unrecognizable version of ourselves. Likewise, it shows us that trauma can transform us into a more compassionate and self-actualized person if we are courageous enough to face it head-on. Since this is such a heavy topic, I want to make sure I am not freestyling, so I will organize my analysis around an established trauma model. And for that, I will be using Dr. Judith Herman's 3-phase model of trauma recovery. Dr. Herman is a world-renowned trauma expert and a professor of clinical psychiatry at Harvard University. She literally wrote the book on trauma. All right, with the disclaimers out of the way, let's discuss Majora's Mask and how it gets trauma perfectly right. In Ocarina of Time, Link purged Hyrule of Ganon's evil and secured the safety of most of Hyrule's citizens. In order to do this, Link had to make tremendous sacrifices. He put himself in horrifying and dangerous situations, lost his best friend to the Sacred Realm, witnessed the death of the Deku Tree, found out he was never a Kokiri, learned about the death of his mother, battled evil incarnate, and after all of that, his work is essentially undone. He is sent back in time to a world blissfully unaware of the destruction and greed of Ganon. Link may know that he saved the world, but that is his secret and burden to bear. The imminent danger is gone, but the pain of the past remains. Link has lost his guardian, Navi, and his best friend, Saria. He has no place, no peers, no one he can relate to. What could ever give Link's life more meaning than literally saving the world? Where does he go from here? In this sense, Link is like a combat veteran. He was raised and conditioned by war and cannot find his footing in peacetime. He is a warrior with no battle left to fight. He is stuck in a moment in time. And so, Link sets off on a quest to find his wartime companion, Navi. After all, she is the only one who has seen what he has seen, who experienced what he lived through. But before Link gets very far in his search, disaster strikes yet again. Skull Kid attacks Link in the woods, stealing his remaining links to his former life, his horse Epona, and the Ocarina of Time. Link is left alone, in a body that is not his, in a land he does not know. His only option is to move forward, into the realm of Termina. As Link emerges into the world of Termina, he soon discovers that he cannot venture far. Throughout the first 3-day cycle, the player is locked in Clocktown, confined to its 4 neighborhoods and the Astral Observatory. The time and geographic constraints placed on this first cycle are a brilliant way to force the player to learn the mechanics of the game. Definitely check out Liam Triforce's video if you want to know more about that. The time and location constraints also allowed the player to become emotionally invested in the world. With nothing to do and nowhere to go, the player is encouraged to explore Clocktown, chat with its residents, and start to understand the dynamics of these NPCs' daily lives. And this is where the magic of Majora's Mask begins. Until Link explores Clocktown, his goal is to regain his own sense of safety and stability. Get Ocarina, get Epona, get highly informed back, and get on with the quest to find Navi. Grabbing Majora's Mask for the Happy Mask Salesman is a sort of afterthought, a task pushed upon you that will soon become a checkbox on your way to the larger objective. But as you start to speak with the citizens of Clocktown, as you witness day by day their growing fear and sorrow over their impending doom, your objectives start to change. You start to care. You want to see these people live on. You want to see them realize dreams, reunite with estranged loved ones, and experience a sense of peace and stability. As you get closer to the residents of Clocktown, the moon gets closer to you, its grotesque and pained visage bearing down on you always, inching ever closer to the end of Termina and the lives of all who live there. These two forces, your growing affection for the citizens of Clocktown and the terror of the apocalyptic moon, merge together to infuse Link and the player with a sense of purpose. And so it is that even as Link secures his own sense of safety and stability, he becomes determined to secure the same sense of peace for the peoples of Termina. After getting the ocarina back from Skull Kid, Link agrees to aid the Happy Mask Salesman in reclaiming Majora's Mask. To assist Link in his quest, the Happy Mask Salesman teaches him the Song of Healing, a song that heals evil magic and troubled spirits. We will talk about this song more in depth in a later section. Suffice it to say, Link is given a therapeutic tool to help heal the sorrows of the peoples of Termina as he embarks on his quest to, once again, save the world. When you first go back in time after obtaining the ocarina, you experience a sense of relief. After all, you dodged the apocalypse. But this feeling wears off quickly. Majora's Mask is depressing, especially in the early game. As you explore new areas and speak to more characters, you learn that bad news and unfortunate events are rife across Termina. A monkey awaits his wrongful execution in the swamp. A witch goes missing in the woods. The waters have turned to toxic sludge. The princess is missing. The Deku butler has lost his son. There's not much good news to be had in Termina. Of course, Link can use his skills to help right the wrongs that plague Termina. But that sense of relief you experienced after you first traveled back through time, it is soon replaced with a sense of sorrow and frustration when you realize that after saving the swamp, returning the Deku princess, and exonerating the monkey, all of your work is undone with one rendition of the Song of Time. No matter what you manage to achieve in any 3-day cycle of Majora, all of your progress will be unmade. As the player, this can feel so discouraging in the beginning. In Ocarina of Time, subtle changes to the world following the completion of certain tasks was so satisfying. Think of how fulfilling it was when you realized that the fire ring around Death Mountain had been permanently quenched following Volvagia's defeat. Or how relieved you felt when Lake Hylia was restored after completing the oh-so-arduous Water Temple. These changes endured for the remainder of the game, serving as satisfying little pats on the back as you battle your way to the final confrontation with Ganon. In Majora's Mask, you are not granted this sense of satisfaction. If anything, you are left with the sense of feeling robbed. You may experience a temporary sense of satisfaction, but it is inevitably snatched away. After returning to the dawn of the first day, you may find yourself going back to the places you saved, remembering the heroic deeds that liberated these lands and people from darkness, only to find that they've reverted back to their original disastrous state. What was the point? What was it all for? I think this process of having your hard-earned accomplishments rendered useless is the primary reason why people do not like or do not finish Majora's Mask. Many people get derailed by this mourning process. The unfairness of it all, the wasted effort, the feeling of meaninglessness. But Majora's Mask is not Ocarina of Time. This game seeks to instill much more than a sense of satisfaction. There are things that this game wants you to feel, and it will evoke these feelings with its unique mechanics and constraints. You are meant to feel frustrated. You are meant to feel unfulfilled. You are meant to feel sorrow and fear. Majora's Mask encourages you to go deeper. In the most benign sense of the word, the game seeks to traumatize you, to leave you feeling disconnected from your accomplishments that are repeatedly undone, and from the people who, no matter what you went through together, will never know who you are on the dawn of the first day. Most video games want you to rise to the challenge technically. They want you to master the gameplay and complete increasingly complex puzzles and battles. In addition to this, Majora's Mask wants you to rise to the task philosophically. It challenges you to derive your own meaning and satisfaction from the game. Beyond the key items in your inventory, there are no milestones to look back on. No monster-scrubbed Kokiri Forest or replenished Lake Hylia to buoy your spirit as you continue on your journey. Up until the final boss battle, everything you do in Majora's Mask is meaningless unless you find your own reason for doing it. And this is what sets Majora's Mask apart from all other video games I've played. In a game that regularly undoes your work, Majora's Mask is much more focused on the why than on the what. This is a shared narrative thread in many pieces of media that play with recycled time. When you have to relive the same series of events over and over and over again, the what becomes utterly meaningless. It is the why that must rise to the foreground. These stories assure us that no matter how repetitive or relentless our realities are, a change of heart or behavior or even just a change of luck can alter the currents of time. They force us to confront the fact that our sphere of influence is very small. There are only a handful of things in life that we can control. But life is better when we seize that control, and better yet, when we use that power to help others. These stories remind us that with enough time, enough pressure, and enough courage, the why can always be found. None of these stories depict their protagonists as having very much fun. They are tortured, exhausted, ran to the brink of sanity. But through the needle's eye of their pain and discomfort, they find the thread of meaning that ties their existence together. According to Dr. Herman, the second phase of trauma recovery, the mourning and remembrance phase, is where this needle gets threaded. It is in this stage that the survivor begins to make meaning of the trauma. They begin to move from the what, the event or events that happened, to the why, the greater meaning this event has in their life story and the lessons learned from the experience. Dr. Herman says that survivors will know they have completed this phase of healing when it occurs to the survivor that perhaps the trauma is not the most important or even the most interesting part of her life story. When the patient reclaims her own history and feels renewed hope and energy for engagement with life, time starts to move again. Luckily, Majora's Mask gives you plenty of opportunities to find your why. That whole thing about Link saving the world again? I kind of lied. In Majora's Mask, you aren't actually saving the world. You're saving the people in it. It is the people, the connections you make, that determine how rich of an experience you have in Majora's Mask. Most people who have played and enjoyed this game have a specific Majora's Mask moment. This is a sort of tipping point, an event, or a piece of dialogue that strikes such an emotional chord with the player that it becomes emblematic of their why, a symbol of their reason for continuing the cycle. For some, it is seeing Romani spaced out after being abducted by aliens. For others, it is the swordsman cowering in his bedroom hours before the moon falls. The postman's excruciating indecision of wanting to flee but feeling obligated to stay. Maybe it's the bartender, so loyal to his customers that he works to the very last, sharing some touching words with you before the world ends. And for many of us, myself included, it is the Anju and Cafe wedding mass side quest. It is difficult to overstate the impact this quest has had on players. For many of us, memories of playing Majora's Mask are completely inseparable from this side quest, as it involves several characters, leads the player to multiple key items, and is just so heart-wrenching. I will never forget the first time I completed the side quest as a young teen. I waited anxiously next to Anju in the upper level of the Stockpot Inn, worrying that Cafe might not make it. It is, perhaps, the emotional high point of the entire game when the couple are reunited at the last. As they resolve to greet the dawn together with only seconds to spare, I played the Song of Time. I remember returning to the dawn of the first day, running back to the Stockpot Inn, and staring at Anju, feeling so many emotions at once. At this point in the game, I knew that everything would be undone, but it had never felt so consequential. After all that they had been through, they were still just as separate as they had been 3 days ago. I felt a tinge of sadness, sure, but what I felt even more was resolve. Staring at Anju behind the reception desk, knowing that she was confused, scared, and missing Cafe, I knew that I had to see this thing through to the end. These people deserved to be together, and it was my purpose to make sure that they prevailed. In other Zelda games, you are the heroic individual, the singular protagonist around which the game's narrative revolves. But in Majora's Mask, the game really revolves around the other people in the world. The small folks whose comings and goings constitute all that is worth saving in Termina. Realizing that we are part of a larger whole, that our worlds are transactional, that we can positively affect others, and that they can positively affect us, are essential components to the final phase of trauma recovery. It is imperative that we fold ourselves back into the world, that we remember the joy that others bring us, and the joy that we can bring others. We are valuable, and we are reminded of that value when we help people. Without us, Anju and Cafe die alone. Without us, Romani is taken by the ghosts. Without us, the swordsman cowers and dies, and without us, the little girl in Akana Canyon never gets her father back. When we are scared or anxious, we become focused on our own protection, our own safety. We close ranks, gathering our emotional resources inwards to protect ourselves from further harm. This is a necessary part of healing. But when we stay stuck in these patterns for years after the threat has passed, we rob the world of a valuable resource, ourselves. It is fitting that by the end of Majora, our quest to find Navi has all but left our minds. Instead of hiding from the world, trying to return to a moment that is forever gone, we make ourselves available to the people of Termina. People begin to depend on us, and we begin to depend on them. The more you participate in the side quests of Majora, the more impactful and meaningful the game becomes, and this is no accident. The developers threw down the gauntlet. We can tell you what you're doing, but you have to decide why you're doing it. And the devs were wise enough to understand that if they hooked us into caring about the people in this world, we would find our why. They knew, maybe instinctively, that connection and engagement with the world are the only bulwarks against meaninglessness and despair. I mentioned earlier that feeling disconnected from the world is one of the most common symptoms of PTSD, and another is a loss of one's sense of self. Trauma can shatter the way we view ourselves and undermine our beliefs about reality, the world, and the people living in it. In Ocarina of Time, Link's identity was the hero of time. But in the Child Link storyline, in which Hyrule is saved, that identity seems to have lost all meaning. As I mentioned previously, Link is like a combat veteran in this way. Off of the battlefield, now that the threat has been neutralized, his identity as a hero doesn't mean very much. If anything, it is a buffer between him and the rest of Hyrule. I believe this is why he leaves to find Navi. He wants to find the one individual who actually knew him as a hero. But throughout the course of Majora's Mask, Link is able to build a new identity. Not as a hero, but as a healer. Very early in the game, the Happy Mask Salesman teaches Link the Song of Healing. This is a melody that heals evil magic and troubled spirits, he says. Let's reflect on this for a moment. What an odd thing to be given at the start of a video game. I can't remember any other game in which I was granted powers to heal the troubled spirits of NPCs. I mean, sure, I've undergone fetch quests to give some fool a potion or a mushroom, and I've had to heal my playable characters. But I have never played any other game in which healing was a central narrative component. It is, in my mind, a much more compelling charge to heal the world than to save it. To save someone is to simply distance them from a threat. To heal someone is a much more complex process. With his ocarina and his inventory of masks, this is exactly what Link must do. As he moves through the lands of Termina, he eases and releases the troubled spirits of the people. But of course, Link's power heals more than just the people. As Link defeats each temple boss, he is, temporarily, healing the land itself. Link cleanses the swamp of its toxicity, restoring its clear water. Symbolically, this is a beautiful representation of trauma and recovery. Trauma is a sort of poison, seeping through the entire system, hurting everything that it touches. It is rarely one distinct, easily located boo-boo, but rather a sort of ether that permeates our entire psyche. Trauma recovery, therefore, is less about the bandaging of a particular wound and more about healing our emotional ecosystem. Where our internal landscape was one of confusion, pain, and fear, healing restores us to the clear waters of safety, stability, and hope. I find the swamp to be one of the more evocative regions of the game for this reason. The other region that has always stood out to me is Akana Canyon. And yes, once again, we are wading into the overly wrought waters of water healing metaphors, but hear me out. Cliche or not, water is associated with healing and emotion pretty much universally. Like Akana Canyon, trauma can leave many of us feeling dried up and emotionally withered. I think it is fitting that Pamela and her accursed father live at the center of the canyon. Their house's music only made possible by the churning of the water. Pamela has taken to hiding her father away and carrying on as if everything were normal. Her defense is to lock it up and put on a brave face. She has allowed her emotions to dry up so that she can survive. But when Link frees her father from the Gibdos curse, the emotions come flooding back. Her and her father are reunited as the little girl returns to feeling and the waters return to the canyon. And of course, let us not forget how Link manages to heal himself. By becoming invested in the lives, dreams, and struggles of the people of Termina, Link finds meaning through his efforts to heal these people and their lands. He has restored his sense of connection with others and has molded a new identity for himself as a healer. He has successfully moved through all 3 phases of trauma recovery. But even after healing the people, the land, and himself, there is one more who Link must heal. And healing this individual is, I would argue, the objective of the game. That's right. It's time to talk about Skull Kid. Early in this video, I claimed that Majora's Mask is a perfect commentary on trauma. And while Link's healing journey through Termina is one reason for making this claim, what really makes Majora's Mask stand out is the contrast between how Link and the Skull Kid respond to their traumas. Whereas Link's actions throughout Majora's Mask demonstrate the healthy and necessary aspects of trauma recovery, Skull Kid's actions illustrate how not to cope with trauma if we want to live a life worth living. For this reason, Dr. Herman's 3-phase model of recovery is no longer relevant. So when speaking about the Skull Kid, I will reference another psychological model, this one from the realm of conflict resolution. The Circle of Aggression and Reconciliation, created by Olga Bacharova. This diagram illustrates not only how one can move from aggression to reconciliation, but also how one can get trapped in aggression for potentially ever. Bacharova notes that the inner cycle of the diagram demonstrates how natural human responses to harm may move people from being victims to becoming aggressors. And Skull Kid perfectly personifies this movement from victim to villain. You see, Skull Kid's friends, the Giants, have left him behind, and Skull Kid feels abandoned. This abandonment leads to intense pain and eventually anger. To use Bacharova's words, anger has a legitimate yet irrational nature. To use my own words, even justified anger has a will of its own. No matter how righteous our rage may be, if we allow anger to control our lives forever, it will inevitably cause more pain and suffering. But let's be honest, anger is useful. If we are sad, we generally lay down, cry, or collapse. But if we are angry, we tend to take action. Anger gives us energy to move, to make change. And if we are fresh off the heels of a traumatizing event, anger can feel like the only emotion that might keep us going when we would otherwise want to break down. And so, it is easy to imagine that Skull Kid would indulge his anger to give himself some relief, some sense of power and agency against his backdrop of loss. Whereas Link regains his sense of self by healing the pain of others, Skull Kid regains his sense of self by partaking in petty acts of anger and revenge. Unfortunately, anger is seductive and addictive. Because of its energy and its usefulness, anger can be easily justified and easily abused. And this is the trap that Skull Kid finds himself in throughout Majora's Mask. With every crime or transgression he commits, he assures himself that it's okay because he is a victim. The more he reassures himself of his righteousness, the more bold and destructive his behavior becomes. And Skull Kid isn't just angry with the giants. He's angry with the entire world. And this is pretty common. As Majora notes, sometimes anger is directed toward outsiders who were unable to prevent the loss, or even towards others who did not experience a similar loss, i.e., the whole world is seen as hostile. All of the characters in Majora's Mask suffer, but for some reason, Skull Kid seems to believe that his suffering is unique, somehow more important than the pain of everyone else. Anger has a way of doing that. This tendency understandably causes him to feel isolated, and it also allows him to justify his destructive behaviors. These behaviors repel others, including his only friends, Tattle and Tail, which further isolates him. In other words, Skull Kid's actions become a self-fulfilling prophecy. What he really wants is the sense of connection he lost when the giants departed. But his anger at their abandonment and his subsequent bad behavior pushes everyone away. I have to be honest, I feel bad for the Skull Kid. Majora says that subconsciously, victims want to restore the sense of deep human connectedness destroyed by conflict. In order to make the wrongdoer understand the pain of the victim, he needs to experience a similar suffering. So, as twisted as it may sound, Skull Kid's acts of terror are actually just unhealthy attempts to restore his sense of connection with others. He is lonely and afraid, and he wants others to feel pain because he is in pain. And if everyone is in pain, maybe he won't feel so lonely. Whereas Link connects with others by helping, Skull Kid connects with others by hurting. But of course, by trying to connect with others by hurting them, Skull Kid experiences more rejection and more abandonment, which causes him more pain and invokes more anger and aggression. So he just keeps cycling. This is why Majora's diagram shows a potential for the circle of aggression to cycle endlessly. It is very difficult, although not impossible, to escape the cycle of aggression once it is started. It is perfectly self-containing and perfectly self-replicating. In my opinion, Skull Kid, or Majora if you like, is the most terrifying villain in the Zelda franchise because his desires are so unquenchable. Whereas Ocarina of Time's Ganondorf is motivated by power, Majora is motivated by his own pain. If a villain is motivated by power, we can negotiate with them by giving them power or taking it away. For example, in Ocarina of Time, there are people who can stay on Ganondorf's good side by playing into his vanity and treating him as their leader. In Majora's Mask, there are no such characters. While there are some shady people who take advantage of the chaos left in the Skull Kid's wake, there are no characters who ally themselves with the Skull Kid. To have friends or allies would take away his feelings of abandonment, and therefore his feelings of victimhood, and therefore his anger, and therefore his power. In this way, Skull Kid can be seen as having no weaknesses, because the more pain we inflict upon him, the more anger he feels, and the more anger he feels, the more powerful he becomes. So how can we possibly stop him? At the end of Majora's Mask, the giants Link, Tattle, and Tail forgive the Skull Kid. They just forgive him. As a teenager, it always sort of floored me how quick they were to forgive. I mean, come on. He caused so much suffering and inconvenience. Think of all of the people we had to save, all of the crises we had to avert, all because of this little brat. He doesn't deserve our forgiveness, right? And yet, my adult self is more mindful of the fact that the wisest beings in the game, the deities of the game, instruct us to forgive. According to Majora, Forgiveness alone makes it possible for the victim to heal the trauma and proceed with life. This is another gentle reminder that this video is not intended as a roadmap for trauma recovery, and I am definitely not implying that you are required to forgive anyone for anything. And Majora herself notes how rarely this happens. And yet, in the context of Majora's Mask, we do have to ask, if not forgiveness, then what? We can't forget, even if we want to. So what are our options? Revenge or resentment? Resentment definitely does not feel good for the victim, but revenge certainly can. The only problem is, like anger, revenge has a will and agenda of its own. Too often, quests for revenge turn into new campaigns of war or victimization. Majora describes the act of forgiveness as giving up a desperate desire to change the past. Whether justice is accomplished or not, forgiveness builds a foundation for the victim to live out of modes determined by anger and reconnect with the world. We tend to think of forgiveness as being a gift to the aggressor, the Skull Kid in this case, but Majora insists that it is ultimately a gift to ourselves. She even argues that the aggressor may not deserve forgiveness, but that the victim deserves to give it anyway. We, as Link, as the players, deserve the opportunity to move on, to end the cycle of grief and revenge and allow time to move forward again. Trauma is, after all, a disorder of time. You're here now, but your psyche is somewhere else, trapped in a memory of the past, forced to relive the visceral feelings of the event over and over again. After beating the stone temple, the giants say, "Forgive your friend," and I have never totally decided who they are talking to or about. Are they talking to us, telling the player Link, Tattle, and Tail to forgive the Skull Kid? Or are they telling the Skull Kid to forgive them for leaving him behind? There is ambiguity here. Who is the victim? Is it Termina, Link, Skull Kid? Who is the aggressor? Is it the giants, the moon, Majora, Skull Kid? Once you have entered the circle of aggression, the lines between victim and villain begin to disintegrate until all parties become some combination of the two. According to Majora, the only way to self-eject from this potentially endless cycle is to summon the courage to forgive. Imagine a Termina in which Skull Kid forgave the giants for leaving him. There would be no 3-day apocalyptic cycle, no monster moon, no Majora's Mask to contend with. All of that would have been completely avoided. That is the power of forgiveness. And so I end this video with what may be a controversial claim. The great triumph in Majora's Mask is not saving Termina. It's not even saving Link. It is healing the Skull Kid. Whereas vengeance may seem apt for someone who has caused so much pain and suffering, the Happy Mask Salesman, the giants, Tattle, Tail, and Link end the cycle of suffering by offering Skull Kid the pathway out of trauma, connection, and forgiveness. And the Skull Kid takes it. Majora describes how forgiveness can lead to healing for all parties in a conflict. Although the act of aggression continues to be perceived as evil, the perpetrator is now seen more as a person who'd become disconnected from his own goodness by the power of his fear. He's perceived as a sinner, a lost soul, overwhelmed by his fears, who perhaps needs love and help in order to understand his sinfulness and restore the connection with his own inner goodness and strength. The only guarantee that the evil will not be committed again. In other words,